Hello and welcome to Kids of Stuff, a Haunted MTL podcast, a Chucky podcast, and I just realized I reversed those two. So, we're talking a new episode of Chucky this week. I have a guest with me, a new guest. This is Corey Smith. Corey, say hello.
Hi, hello.
Okay, so you've caught up with the show.
Yes.
Now, what got you started watching the show?
I actually, weirdly enough, I didn't know it existed at all until I saw you talking about it.
Haha, so I am doing a service, so
Yeah.
John Mancini, call me, hire me for the show to publicize it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Corey, you've listened to the show, so tell me, what is it that you do? Why did I bring you on?
Okay. Well, as far as your intentions, I can't speak to what's going on in that big goofy head of yours, but I am a VFX artist and compositor for a living. I work in film and television, in post production and stuff. And I have been for 15 years now, something like that.
Yeah, because we've known each other for a while.
Yeah, we have. I used to make really, really bad comics, and then I moved on to making really bad art for films. So,
so can you talk about some of like the films that you've worked on?
Sure. Let me try to remember all the horrible.
Yeah, just pull yourself up on IMDb.
Yeah.
Let's see what my greatest hits are.
The first thing I actually worked on would have been, I think, was the first Thor movie. But that was back when I was doing, like, when I first started in the industry, I was doing 3D, those 3D conversions, right, for stereoscopic 3D stuff. But I've always been into film. It was always like I always wanted to be in the film industry in one way or another. My dad was in the film industry. He's the one that, like, I got my love for horror movies from him. And he did camera work on some like real low budget films. Like there was a movie called Born, the Body Organ Replacement Network. Did
he ever work with Roger Corman?
I think he has met Roger Corman, but I don't think
like everybody in Hollywood has met Roger Corman at some point.
Yeah, and Bill Paxton. I know he did something.
Filmed
like a chase scene in a Bill Paxton movie or something like that.
So you were doing 3D on Thor. Is there anything more recent you can talk about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it's all like it's post, and we always we pick up shots from all over the place. But I mean, I've worked on Thor was in 2011. The current job that I have is at a place that mostly does stuff for Netflix. Actually, it's entirely it's partially owned by Netflix. So
there you go.
We worked on like The Irregulars, Space Force, Avenue 5, Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun. I think it's what
I've seen that. I haven't seen the show, but I've seen previews, and it looks like a fun sketch comedy thing.
And we also worked on we did I think it's a movie called Night Books.
Okay.
And that was like a R.L. Stine, Stephen King inspired thing. And
there you go.
Yeah, we work on a lot of stuff. It's the kind of thing especially when you're working on like compositing, usually a quick turnaround kind of compositing shots. Especially you work on a lot of projects throughout the year, so.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you've got, like, and considering, like, how Netflix is producing, like, 50 billion shows a year, I'm sure you've got, like, a ton of stuff you're doing. You know, the most disturbing part about this whole conversation was 2011 was 10 years ago. Oh, my God, I feel so old now.
Yeah.
So, all right, so, you work in the industry, which means you're going to have some fun insight, but let's talk about horror for a second. What is your experience with horror film? Like, not because I know you haven't really like worked on any, but you've watched a bunch of them.
So a lot of it was just growing up with my dad. He would always like give me a VHS tape and be like, "Here, watch this." I'd be like, "What the hell is this?" And I'd put it in. It'd be something wild and weird. But he always had an interest in horror movies, mostly because of like what aspiring filmmakers have, which is that they're generally a lot cheaper and easier to make than other kinds of film. and you also get a lot more leeway with like creativity that you can do and stuff.
Right. Well, and especially when your dad was probably working in the industry, because so much of the horror film was going like direct to video, direct to tape, to be like easily edited and distributed. Like that's some of my favorite like horror of the period, is just like the quick, like, okay, we've got a few VHS tapes, let's stitch something together.
Yeah, see what we can make. So like, I mean, the Evil Dead series, I think the first time I saw it, the first one I saw was Army of Darkness, but I saw it when I was like 8. You know? But I would just like watch them on loop all the time. Evil Dead and Poltergeist was a little higher budget, but like I loved Poltergeist, and I watched movies all day long, every day. Just like my VHS player was always going in my bedroom, regardless of what else I was doing. And so I love horror. I've always had a soft spot for horror. I watch all of it. I probably hate more than half of it, but I still watch it. Because there's always something, I'll look for little moments to be like, oh, that was so cool,
Like I'm that way with like all films now. Like it takes a lot for me to hate a movie. I've like grown up in that regards. Because, when I was in high school, I was a little cynical asshole, but but no, it's like any movie now, there's something of value to it. So I'll watch it and go, oh no, that's cool. It's like that's maybe not how I would do it, but and like okay, so do you have Shudder at all?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that a great thing? I love Shudder so much. Even like
I like Shudder a lot, but I've had some problems with some movie. I watched a movie on Shudder that made me absolutely infuriated recently.
Okay, I need to know what movie that is, because I want to watch it.
I don't think this one was on Shudder. What I watched was it was called Meander. I don't think it was on Shudder, but that movie made me infuriated. There was something on here that I watched that drove me crazy, though. I can't remember what it was. But I've watched like everything on Shudder. I mean, some stuff definitely sticks out more than others just because it's so good. The Mortuary Collection was great.
Yes, Mortuary Collection, so good. Clancy Brown is the mortician, just so perfect. I mean, Shudder's had some original, like some really good originals. Like I love Host. The Zoom movie, as it were, because I mean, it just talk about like lightning in the bottle and just a movie for the times. And it looked like it was relatively like simple to do to a degree too, which is like it's just like as a person who enjoys film, just kind of watching, it's like, man, I wish I had that idea.
And that's definitely my connection with horror, is that I feel like it's it's a place where even though there's tropes and people repeat the same mistakes all the time, like there's so much room for creativity in it, because when you're talking about like the smaller budget, people are more okay to greenlight you doing something completely bizarre, like having a baby burst out of a man's genitals, like
or like a basket case, this guy carries his parasitic twin.
Or what's the one what is the movie, is it this really bizarre 80s film where a guy has like a thing stuck in the back of his head that keeps it's like a creature that keeps shooting this goo in him, like it's like heroin or something going into his brain. It makes him feel good.
I know the exact movie because Joe Bob showed it like last season on the drive-in, Brain something. I don't know. But I know that exact movie you're talking about. That was amazing. I love that movie. Because it's from the guy who did Basket Case. In fact, there's you see the character from Basket Case in that movie as well, which is fantastic. Okay, so let's talk Chucky. Like specifically, like what's your experience with the Chucky franchise?
Sure. So Chucky's a weird one because as I want to say I was maybe 6 years old, and I don't know how this happened, but it must have been. I don't know if Dad was watching it or what. I just know it was on TV, and I saw the majority of the first Child's Play movie when I was very young, when I was about 6 years old, and I was terrified of it. I mean, like I had nightmares for years about this damn doll. It was the worst. But as I got older, and I finally and I've always, I mean, like this is, if there's anything that creeps me out, is dolls. It's like some people is clowns. Some people is certain kinds of ghosts or whatever. No, for me, it's dolls. Dolls are terrifying to me. But I finally got the courage up in my teenage years to like actually rewatch it. and now it's like I'm a fan of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because for one, and I hope this isn't like upsetting to you, but like I don't think in general Child's Play is ever really that scary.
Oh no, that's
like
fine. Like, you know,
it doesn't really induce fear in me, I guess.
It takes a lot to scare me. So like when I watch
Yeah.
Child's Play, I'm never like really afraid of anything. Like there's only a handful of movies where I'm like, oh god, okay, that actually scares me.
Right, but I also think I think something that's kind of maybe not completely unique, but something that is at its core with Child's Play is that even when it's not leaning full tilt into horror comedy, it's never really necessarily trying to be terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
It's just meant to be a wild ride, you know?
I can see that.
I mean, that's always the sense that I got from it, right? Where you've got your moments that are legitimately like kind of shocking, mm-hmm. and you got your moments, you know, like where they play with which doll they're using, you know, which version of like they got, because they'll switch from scene to scene, you know, it'll be like, well, a really innocent looking one, and then they'll like you might have a few frames of just the most terrifying face on the doll, you know, and like that it sticks in your brain, and it is like it's creepy.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the difference. Like, you know, because scary, it's not always scary, but it is always creepy. Mm-hmm. You know, one of my favorite moments in the original Child's Play is like the burned out Chucky doll just kind of walking down the hallway, and you know, and it's like it's not scary to me, but it is creepy. Like I can imagine, like, and I think it's maybe if I was in that situation that was happening to me, it would be scary, but because I'm like detached from it, it's creepy to me.
Right, and like that's the kind of thing where like you close your eyes later and you just see that image kind of burned into your brain still, and
especially the little teeth poking through. Oh yeah, it's a wonderfully creepy visual.
Yeah, and it's always something that I've always really liked about the movies is that they do a good job of kind of like they play with tone, right? It's generally, I feel like the approach is to make the world of the Chucky movies, of Child's Play movies, like more surreal a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's a world like a heightened
reality.
It's a world where like Britney Spears is dead. You know, Redman's dead.
Yeah,
Martha Stewart got executed.
yeah, but you also like it'll kind of come back to reality when it's appropriate for like shocking moments. You know, where it's not like an old horror serial where it turns into a Dutch angle and it zooms in on the woman's face and she's just like screaming in the corner. You know, it happens sometimes, but for the most part, like you kind of take your horror. It kind of like I was thinking about it the other day that it kind of reminds me of like a little bit of how Ghostbusters did a good job of kind of writing that line where it's like the characters take it, like even though it's not scary and it's not trying to be scary in Ghostbusters, the characters take it seriously. So like the scary stuff that happens in Ghostbusters does scare those characters.
Yeah, I mean, they're not like winking at the
camera and being like, her hurting this dumb, like
well, except for maybe Venkman a little bit.
Well, yeah.
But no, it's like you take it on its own terms, and that's the thing. One of the things I love about Chucky is like, you know, I buy into the world. Mm-hmm. No matter how weird and silly it is, it's like they do it with enough earnestness that you're like, okay, yeah, no, I'm along for the ride. I get what they're going with here. Let's just enjoy it.
Right.
So, speaking of enjoying it, how are you enjoying the series as a whole so far? The TV show.
I'm loving it, actually. I think it's probably because I just recently have been rewatching the whole movie series too, and I actually think I like this show more than the majority of the movies.
Well, and I mean that's perfectly fair. Like, so just what's your favorite of the movies?
So that's actually changed in my recent rewatching too. I always said that for the most part, my favorite was Bride, but I think that's just because that's the one I was most familiar with because it was always on TV. Yeah, when I was younger, it was on.
That
TV
one was
constantly.
big on cable.
Yeah, and so I saw it so many times. Rewatching it, it's not like I don't dislike that movie now, but I do feel like because it had that tone shift with Universal taking it over and everything, that movie felt a little bit like it was sort of making fun of the series. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was leaning real hard into it being funny, and it is funny. But it kind of was a little something of the magic I think was maybe lost for a bit. Yeah. But that it's first movie is definitely my favorite. I mean, it's just such a weird idea. It's executed with a level of artistry that, like, the places where it's poorly done is almost entirely due to budget.
Yeah.
It's a weird script. I don't know who said, yes, I want to do this, or why anybody was down for it, because it's so strange, especially because, like, the whole concept is weird from the get-go, because you have your horror setup where, killer doll, all right, that could be scary, but you kind of undermine it right in the beginning of the movie by having this weird bedraggled serial killer guy that just kind of looks homeless running into a toy store, and then you're just like, oh, this is just some asshole, like, so like it almost undermines the scariness of it, but at the same time it changes it into something that you're like, I've never seen anything like this before. This is weird.
Well, I could see how you could argue that it kind of undermines things a little bit, but I also think it kind of like develops things a little bit, because we have this idea of like developing a fear of strangers and children. So what happens if your child's toy is literally the worst person? Like, he's the person is the poster child for like stranger danger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the original intent with the movie, like in the first draft, it wasn't supposed to be like a serial killer in the body of the doll. It was the doll was a manifestation of Andy's rage. Because the original name for the movie was supposed to be like Blood Buddy, and that was the whole idea, is that like this kid's like rage gets manifested within this doll. They like blood gets into the doll, and then the doll becomes a manifestation of this child's rage. Which they kind of revisit that a little bit in this episode of the show. So I think we can kind of talk about the episode.
Yeah, sure.
Let me go ahead and just give a couple things off the top. This episode is Season 1, Episode 7, Twice the Grieving, Double the Loss. We have the recent murders on the show, which has eliminated two major motherly figures in Detective Evans and Bree Wheeler. We get more of a sense of what Chucky's after in this episode, but we don't have all of the clues. Then we also have Tiffany coming in and kind of stirring up shit. And then, we've got Andy. Andy makes a potentially very, very dumb decision. And then, the kids are kind of reassessing their relationships and, like, what are they going to do about this whole Chucky situation? So there's, like, a lot going on in this episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then I do want to mention this is Samir Rahem's second episode he's directed so far, I believe, which I think he did a great job, because he did the previous one as well. Two very, very strong episodes. And then specifically, I want to mention the writers who are... I have it somewhere here in my notes, and I can't find them in my notes. That's always great. Oh, yes. Mallory Westfall and Isabella Gutierrez. I think as far as like the writing of this episode goes, like episodes 6 and 7 are like a great 1-2 punch of storytelling, especially because they kind of work as that the climax of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, specifically, like, I had mentioned in the last episode when I was talking with Phil Gibson, that this is like, if we're an 8-hour Chucky movie, we're in like the last act, and like this is definitely kind of continuing that whole that whole structure, because this is where everything's like falling apart, and like just so good though. Like I really appreciate like this 1-2 punch of content here.
Yeah, you definitely, there's definitely a lot going on, even just like specifically in this episode, because it's like you're finally getting reveals for things, maybe questions that you've had for a while, and they're good reveals, and even those reveals have some twists, so it's pretty interesting and weird.
So please continue.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, maybe we don't want to talk about this part yet, but like I was thinking this whole time, like, man, it's weird that Chucky's so obsessed with getting kids to kill their parents. Mm-hmm. Why are they spending so much time on this? And then, like, I get answers for that by the end of this episode.
Yeah.
So I thought that they were just writing it weird.
So what are those answers? Let's talk about that.
Okay. So, well, I from the beginning of this, I've been thinking, like, I was like, are they just changing what Chucky's all about? Are they are they playing, because there's so many kids in this? Are they playing with like the corruption of innocence?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are they just really leaning hard into that theme? But I'm like, also the other thing is like every iteration of Chucky I've ever seen, he has fairly specific goals. He's a lunatic. He gets distracted by killing people all the time. It's like he wants to get his soul into Andy, but he's also, I'll just kill this person while I'm at it, but
I'll kill the babysitter.
Yeah. But he does have specific goals, and like up until this, I would say this episode, we really didn't understand what he was doing.
Right.
Other than stirring up trouble in his hometown. But yeah, so he's tried with what's her name? Carolyn?
Yeah, Carol.
I think he tried with Carolyn, and he tried with Jake, and he's now working on Junior in this episode to trying to get these kids to kill their parents. And
he succeeds with Junior.
And he succeeds with Junior, who savagely beats his father to death with the Chucky doll.
I'm just glad to see them kind of, because Junior's always been on a little bit of a periphery of the show, because he's not like part of the core group, so he's been like isolated from stuff, and then you have the stuff with his mom dying and everything like that. It was so fun to kind of, because Teo Briones, who plays Junior, is really, really good, and I'm glad they gave him like finally, like, it's that kind of like get in the game thing that Chucky keeps saying. Right. It's nice to have him like get in there, and that scene where he murders Logan with the doll is amazing. Especially like Chucky just like enjoying the hell out of it.
Yeah.
But regarding that, okay, so obviously it's definitely a reference to Seed of Chucky, where Jennifer Tilly is beating the housekeeper or the nanny for Glenn Glenda, because she's beating her down with a Tiffany doll. So there's a reference there. But I was watching one of the like behind the scenes features, and I've never seen the movie before. I heard of it, but I'd never seen it, so this is why I didn't make that connection. But the movie Magic from 1978 with Anthony Hopkins and Burgess Meredith. That scene is a direct reference to it, because at one point Anthony Hopkins beats Burgess Meredith to death with a ventriloquist dummy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
this movie.
Yeah, and it's one of those where it's like, I can't believe I've never seen this movie, because like I'm good at catching a lot of references, but like I've not seen every movie on Earth. But that's one of the things that. It's one of the things I appreciate about the show, is just like how Don Mancini's just like, okay, I'm going to whip out this Brian De Palma reference, or here's a reference to an Anthony Hopkins movie where he beats a dude with a dummy.
They do like their references. I mean,
oh yeah,
Glenn or Glenda is like a whole reference in a character.
Yeah, and then of course, like we get that big Frankenstein reference, which Frankenstein's been a thing in the series since Bride of Chucky.
Yeah. Yeah, with him getting stitched back together. I noticed that too, that they had the Frankenstein that's going to be the town event.
Well, and then with in Bride of Chucky, I mean, obviously direct reference to Bride of Frankenstein, but then you have the scene with Tiffany in the bath watching Bride of Frankenstein, and then Chucky like shoves the TV in there and everything like that.
Right.
I do appreciate like the film literacy of Don Mancini. You could tell there's a guy who just like knows his shit.
And they also know all of the one other movies that Jennifer Tilly's been in, because they brought out that reference once again.
God, I had to pause it. I was laughing at that part. So to set the scene, they're at the it's not the funeral, it's the wake. But they're at the wake for Bree, and oh no, it was after the wake, because she comes back later with the Swedish meatballs, which I love the whole Swedish meatballs thing. But no, Jennifer Tilly, aka Tiffany, in Jennifer Tilly's body comes up wearing the cute like dress and the thing, and she brings a little plate of Swedish meatballs to Junior, and then she's Junior's like, "Hey, I recognize you." And she's like, "Oh, aren't you a little young to have seen Bound?"
Yeah. Yep.
Which is a great movie, by the way. I love that movie.
It's they mentioned it that's what, maybe the third or fourth time they've mentioned that movie in.
Well, that's like
over the course of the series.
That's like her biggest movie outside like Monsters Incorporated.
Speaking of references, maybe this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but I wanted to note something because you know how the different logo every episode.
Yeah.
And this time a lot of the logo is usually related to something that you see in the opening, the cold open or whatever. But this time, I guess because they were at the funeral, it's tombstones. And the tombstones all have names. Well, not all of them. There are names on the tombstones. And I wrote down a bunch of the ones I had. And one of them was a pretty deep cut. I thought it was a Howard Fitzwater, which is the original name. It's the name of Damien, the guy that dies in Bride of Chucky.
That's right.
I guess there's like a news report that says that he's missing or dead or whatever, and his name was Howard Fitzwater. It's just like, it's such a weird deep cut, but they put it on one of the little tombstones in the logo. They also had
Redman
and Eddie Caputo.
Sarah Pierce, Grace Poole.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I really appreciate that. Like, and again, like I talk about this week after week, but like the attention to detail that they put into the show like that. Like, because I love the changing title card every week. That's one of my favorite. Like, I love when shows do little things like that. So just having all those like names on the tombstones, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really cute. And yeah, the Swedish meatballs, which is like a throwaway line in Bride of Chucky. It's like a joke because you're like, how is she cooking? It's because they're in that RV that they stole. And she's just cooking in the back of it. She's like, I made Swedish meatballs, your favorite.
Well, and it's one of those things that becomes a running gag, like her always mentioning her mother, Yeah. And, it just... Oh, yeah, I did want to bring up one more thing with the whole Jennifer Tilly and Tio scene, where she like touches his face, but it's like the most awkward, forced thing ever. It is like the funniest thing because sometimes when I'm watching something with my wife, just to mess with her, I'll just kind of like reach my hand over to her face and just kind of like rub my hand down her face in like the most awkward way possible.
Yeah,
like I have affection for you, but it's a wonderful, ridiculous like moment, and it's like because the implication is that like she's just trying to fuck with this whole thing. She doesn't like really have a plan to it.
Well, that's kind of what I've been wondering about her, because, and I feel like you probably know more about it because there's the one movie that you're like way more familiar with, which is Cult of Chucky, which is a hard watch for me. So
I love that's in my top 3.
Yeah. No, I know. But what I was going to say is, like, I'm a little unclear as to the alliance between Tiff and Chucky right now, like how strong it is, because they kind of go back and forth. Sometimes she's working against him, sometimes she's working with him. I know at the end of Curse of Chucky, she's mailing him to people, or versions of him.
They're playing out the relationship as we saw it in Bride of Chucky, because, like, number one, like, their relationship has never been good. Like, they've always been kind of going back and forth. They have their moments, but, like, the movie starts with her taking the Chucky doll and imprisoning it in a makeshift prison, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they go kind of back and forth. The whole scene with the RV where, like, it's like, Chucky's like, hey, those dishes are piling up.
Right.
So like their relationship definitely goes back and forth. Like, you could tell they care for each other in the weird, fucked up serial killer way. Because we see that in the flashbacks too, but also like Chucky is easily distracted by things. Tiffany's like a romantic in a very odd way.
Right. But now, see, it seems like we're seeing her actively aiding him. Because I mean, like, she's the turning point that puts Junior over the edge to kill Logan. Right, yeah. Like that, like it be her presence showing up and delivering meatballs, dropping weird little obvious, like we don't know each other very well yet, like stuff like that, and you're like, oh well, it seems like she's a really big part of this plan.
Yeah, but also you get the sense that like she's just kind of doing what she does, but it makes you wonder, how in touch with the Chucky that's running around with Jake and company, how in touch she is, and like specifically like how do the multiple dolls like function? Do they have some sort of hive mind or not? I don't think they do, but like it could just be once again just like really messed up circumstances that are just working in the favor of Chucky in this case.
Right.
So I do appreciate that there's like that, tension that's always there between them. And, with Tiffany being the romantic and like telling Nika like, oh, I see your eyes behind, I see your eyes when we're together and that sort of thing. It's like, like Tiffany's not all there.
Right. That's true. But she has another part to play, I'm assuming, because the mayor Cross announces the Frankenstein movie matinee for charity, right? Mm-hmm. And that there's going to be a celebrity guest. And I'm like, dollars to donuts. This is going to be Jennifer Tilly.
Oh yeah, it's totally going to be Jennifer Tilly. And I'm going to go ahead and theorize now that the season's going to end with those Chucky dolls just murdering people in the movie theater.
yeah, I think that's going to be.
I think that's going to be a great place to end it. Just like a 5-minute series of carnage of like Chucky's like locking people in the theater, maybe even like burning it down or something like that. I think that would be like a great way to end the season, because then it's like, oh shit, what happens in season 2?
Maybe even a reference to the
Gremlins.
movie Demons. Oh, or Gremlins.
Yeah. Oh, Demons. Yes, Demons. I love that movie. No, but like, yeah, she's definitely going to be the celebrity guest. They've made several references to her being Jennifer Tilly in the show. Mm-hmm. Especially with the realtor. I'm like, do you want an autograph?
Right.
So yeah, I think we're going to get that. Jennifer Tilly is obviously the guest for the show, but I think that's great. I just love the fact that it's like, Tiffany loves Jennifer Tilly, and it's like, I want to be Jennifer Tilly, and now she is. Mm-hmm. This is fantastic.
And presumably she's doing pretty well. She's no longer fighting Julia Roberts for roles. So.
I wonder if she got the role of the Virgin Mary. But no, like there's so much going on in this episode. So let's talk about the kids.
Yes.
Specifically, like the way that their relationship, like they're obviously feeling like super defeated at the end of like episode 6. Like this is like the worst. This is them at their lowest right now, I think.
Right.
And then how have you been on the Jake and Devin relationship? Because I've loved it. I've loved seeing them get together. I still have like issues with it, like for specifically, Devin recorded Jake without his consent, and I find that very problematic. But no, like Jake and Devin are like so cute together. So it made me sad to see that like, oh no, they're splitting up just a little bit.
Yeah, well, I like their relationship, and I would say I'm fairly invested in it. Though I was a little off put by the fact that we spend so much time talking about it, considering Devin just lost his mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's kind of weird that he seems so focused on this, on like, because it seems like, first of all, he's pushing Jake away, presumably to keep him safe so he can go do detective stuff.
Well, I think that's like a switch in the episode, because I think at first he's still grappling with the loss of his mother, who I think her first name is Christine. I think it's Christine Evans. Okay. But like, he's obviously like hurt and everything like that. This is probably like a couple of days later, so he's not like still actively like crying, but like he's definitely hurt by this, and that's what causes him to kind of like push Jake away. But it's not until he kind of like is going through his stuff that he decides he's going to go ahead and check out the Charles Lee Ray residence. Right.
Well, I guess I only assumed that maybe that was part of it beforehand, just because we're like constantly reinforcing the fact that he loves old detective noir movies.
Yeah.
And, and he's got his podcast about like solving mysteries and stuff, or, the interesting history of the place that he lives in. So it's, I don't know. I was a little bit feeling like maybe there's some thread there, but yeah, I know what you mean. It is kind of set up like he's just actually pushing him away, and then he has a turn and makes a decision to go.
Yeah, he kind of puts something together, and he's like, I'm gonna check this out. But I think like because of his interest in like true crime and everything like that, like I totally see that like that's probably always kind of in the back of his mind to a degree, like maybe even subconsciously. But no, I think they did a pretty good job of establishing that like this is a kid in grief, you know, and then sometimes when in grief we push people away instead of bringing them to us.
For sure.
You know, so that whole thing with Jake, and you know, might even be a little bit of subconscious anger at Jake too. You know, because again, like none of this would have happened if Jake hadn't picked up that doll.
Right. Oh, and he sees Junior being really angry at Jake, and he's like, okay, well, I'm not gonna have that reaction, but still got some mixed feelings here. I could see that.
Yeah, and then you know, the other thing is like the show is kind of evoking that image of the like kids running away, especially you know queer kids running away, because that's unfortunately a reality for a lot of kids. Is you know, like I teach English, and we did a unit on like drag, right? And we talked about I had them watch like Paris is Burning, and you know one of the performers, I think it was Venus, she talks about how she ran away from home at like 14. And it's just for a lot of queer kids, you know, thankfully in the case of Jake and Devin, it wasn't because they aren't running away because they are being rejected for being queer. It's more that like they're running away because they have this killer doll situation. But
right.
But it still evokes that trauma that a lot of queer kids go through, which I thought was very interesting. It's like the same melody, just in a different key.
Yeah. Well, definitely Jake, like while he, I would say he handles it differently from Andy Barclay. Like he's facing a lot of the same stuff where it's like people don't really want to accept what you're saying, you know, what you say you're going through. Nobody really understands it or can sympathize with it. You just kind of have to deal with the shit on your own. Well,
and then that's the thing. The difference, the major difference between Jake and Andy is that like Jake has more agency because he's older.
Right.
You know, Andy is like, if you compare the situations between the two characters, I feel like Andy still had the situation a little worse because like what agency does he have? He's a child. He can't do anything. Like society won't let him do anything. Whereas Jake, you know, Jake is at least old enough to go running off on his own if he has to.
Right.
So it's a different scenario. So I do appreciate that there's kind of a mirror between them, but also like, Jake is a little more equipped, and I think we see that with adult Andy as well, because, you know, I get the sense that Andy completely has been stunted, like, emotionally by everything he's gone through. So, you know, like, Jake at least is going to be able to form some semblance of life after Chucky, provided he survives. Andy never will.
Yeah, that's been off the table for a while for Andy.
Yeah, like, because you know, the little bits we've gotten with adult Andy have been a lot of fun, and, like, this is the most time we've spent with him now since Cult of Chucky, you know, because he had his scenes in Cult of Chucky, but like now we're spending a lot of time with Andy, and you know, it's great that they brought back Kyle, and again, it's also like that idea of the development, because Kyle was able to form some sort of life because she was older when she dealt with Chucky.
Right.
We see that she's married and everything like that, but like again, Andy, just because of him being that little kid, he was never able to kind of grow up and over this thing.
Yeah, and you also get the sense that Kyle's only really in this for Andy, like in the show, right? Like she's following him around on a cross country trip to eliminate all the Chucky dolls, and she knows it needs to be done. But they don't spend a lot of time together. We don't get a lot of screen time with the two of them. So, but maybe I'm just reading into it. But I kind of just have this feeling like she's there for him, not necessarily for the mission.
Well, and I think we do get a good like sign of like what their relationship is, like the fact that like after the end of Cult of Chucky, like Andy calls her in to take care of like the severed Chucky head that she did not know about, and she makes a very good point of like, you know, you're keeping the head of Chucky in your you kept it in a safe in your house. It's like, well, you know, I learned it in the military school, which I appreciate how unhinged Andy is. Really. So his acting isn't the best. I'll be honest there. His acting's a little flat, but I also wonder if it's maybe that's kind of playing into like the Andy character a little bit as being, stunted. You know what I mean?
Just a little off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I was getting that vibe too, though, that it's more just like kind of a weak performance, but they've, I appreciate that they're sticking with this actor and not just replacing him.
And I still love the character so much, and it just makes me happy to see him back.
I'm mad that he left Kyle at the gas station, though.
Yeah, no, that's the dumbest thing Andy's ever done at this point. Because I talk about
they've been traveling together. How long? How long have they been traveling together?
And just strands are in another state.
Dolls. And now it's just like there's one. As far as he knows, he's just going to take care of one more doll, and he's like, bye.
Yeah. And he's not the best at these situations because you had that scene in the 6th episode where they're doing the whole like scheme of like, oh, we're census takers, and he just cannot commit to the act. He's twitchy and just kind of like staring around looking for the dolls. Like, do you have any dolls? Have there been any fires? But no, I absolutely love that, and like it just makes me so happy to see Andy back as a character, and I hope he doesn't get killed off right away. Like eventually, like Chucky killing Andy seems like it's going to be the direction they're going to go. I just hope it doesn't happen yet.
Mm-mm.
Like, because ultimately, like Andy's a tragic character, and I think he needs for his character to have kind of like, I think Andy does need to die as a character because that's kind of the tragedy of the character. It may have taken Chucky like 30 years, but so I don't know. Like, I'm happy where we're going with that, but I also kind of like a little worried for the character.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on how much they want to, like, if they wanted to just say, look, this is the end of this, we're never touching it again, then I could see him killing Andy. But if not, I mean, the fact that he never successfully like possessed Andy or killed him or anything like that's almost a defining like trait of who Chucky is at this point.
Yeah, the completion anxiety that Nika brings up in Curse. Yeah. Because if it all comes down to like Chucky and Andy having kind of like a final moment, like I think that would be that would provide some great catharsis for everybody, just because that storyline's been going on for like 30 years now, whether we only saw it across like maybe 5 movies. It's been in the background the entire time.
Right.
So we talked about like the relationship. I keep thinking about that death of Logan, and just like the Chucky just kind of like smiling as he's being used to bludgeon that man to death. And it just, that whole scene is great, especially like the aftermath where Teo is, Junior is sitting against the wall singing the song, and then Chucky starts singing with him.
Yeah.
It's just so bizarre, so campy, and just, again, so perfect. Like, I love the tone of the show.
I found myself thinking back though, like, because I thought like Junior's turn to being so quick to just accept this talking doll telling him to kill his dad.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, it's been a build up, but at the same time, I'm like, I was trying to remember. I'm thinking back through the previous 6 episodes, and I'm like, wasn't there a moment at some point when Jake said, "I'm pretty sure this doll is responsible for these murders"? Did he not ever say that to Junior? Because
I don't think he ever said that to Junior. Well, because I know that during the town meeting part that Lexi tells Junior this. She like said, because Junior like comes up to them in the theater because it's Jake, Devin, and Lexi sitting there. Right. And he comes up like being a shit, like hey, move. But no, like she tells him like, hey, no, it's a doll doing this. And then, you also get that scene, like after the psychologist leaves and Jake comes up to Junior and says like, I don't think your mom killed herself, which is not the right thing to say at the time because, Jake made a big mistake there. But yeah, no, he's been told that like Chucky's been doing stuff, but also you get the sense that there's like been long simmering resentment on Junior's end for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, Junior definitely has resentment for his dad too, because they kept kind of showing you that he was like overbearing. He was like demanding that his kid be successful, and and it's like I think that was kind of the idea, like where a lot of that anger and resentment came from, and then also seeing his dad become an alcoholic, or his dad drinking really heavily, being an alcoholic, and then and kind of blaming his dad for his mom.
Yeah,
his mom's suicide. I get it, but I'm just like, I'm thinking like, oh, there's these mysterious deaths going on. People tell you that this doll's not good, and then it starts talking to you and telling you to kill your family.
But also the way that Junior kind of cradled that knife, you get the sense that there's like a darkness in there. So like his turn, like, and the show has a lot of balls to juggle, and like not all of them are going to get like the appropriate amount of development. But I think what we have with Junior is enough to where, again, it's like I can buy into the logic of the universe. Like, I know that there's enough there that like, okay, yeah, he's going to kill his dad, and I can I can get behind that because
I had a lot of appreciation for the scene. I will say, like there's like this thing that Chucky likes to do with people, which is like gaslight them a little bit, like make them not really understand what's real. And knowing he's drunk and starting to talk to him, but like in a way where he's still convinced that Junior's kind of doing it. He's like, how are you doing that? It's like they let that scene go on for a long time because, like, even though they already know they're gonna kill him, they're just kind of screwing with him.
It's such a good scene.
Doubt reality.
Yeah, and then all credit to Devon Sawa there, because like he puts in the 3 episodes that the 3 latest episodes, including this one, like he really like puts Logan through the ringer, and just going from like the stern dad to the tiger dad to like the drunk asshole, the depressed guy. Like he does a great job, and I'm sad to see Devon Sawa go. I think he was a great like choice to play the dad and then to play the other dad. I'm gonna miss him. Yeah, I liked Logan. Like not personally, he's kind of an asshole, but like that's my thing. I like the characters who stir up trouble and who cause trouble for everybody else. Because that's where all my entertainment comes from in these shows.
Yeah. So. Well, I also like that there's a little bit of depth to some of the even the characters we don't get a lot of screen time with, like even like Jake's dad, not Logan, Lucas. Is it Lucas?
Yeah.
Like where it's like he's kind of back and forth. Like he's like, oh, the sculpture's really cool, where he's not just like straight up one dimensional, like, oh, I hate my queer kid, like he's got a little bit of dimension to him, even though he's really kind of a jackass.
Yeah.
And Logan's kind of the same way, where it's like he sticks up for Jake more than once, and even though he's an overbearing dad and he's not a great guy and he's an alcoholic and all this stuff, there's a few layers there to kind of make them more interesting characters, and I really like that.
Yeah. So we don't get any like continuation. Speaking of characters who are like you don't get a ton with, we don't get a lot more on Miss Fairchild in this episode. The biology teacher. So I'm curious where that's going. Is it just like they're gonna pin something on her, or are we gonna get a reveal? Because they keep dancing around the idea that like her identity may be tied to this whole Chucky situation.
Right.
So who knows?
Yeah.
There's so much going on. Like we could talk about any number of things, but like I just want to see if there's anything in particular you want to hit, because I like to hear your thoughts on these things.
Yeah. So let's see. Let me look through my notes because I'm trying to think what else I was like specifically interested in. There is something I want to talk about, just like maybe at the end of stuff. Just it's just a visual effects thing that I thought was
let's talk about the visual effects, because I've been on record like several times that I think like I'm just so happy that they made the show now because of what they can do with the animatronics and the visual effects. Like I feel like this is movie quality. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but no, I feel like it's absolutely movie quality.
No, it absolutely is. But there's this delightful thing they've been doing with this show that I feel like most other things, if we were doing a modern show of any horror franchise, right? It's like everything would, even if it was great CG, everything would be CG just because it's easier. And overall it's cheaper nowadays because you got to spend a lot of time on set with those puppets when you're doing these practical effects. But overall, I've really been impressed by the visual effects. But what I was gonna say is delightful is that they're still doing the shots where they put a little person in a costume.
Yes,
they're just doing them way better. But I think that it's an intentional decision because that's part of the style, the known style, and it's one of the things people actually like. Right? It's fun when you see it, because it's like it's still creepy, but it's like you know what you're seeing. It's not really necessarily the doll, but they still use those shots, and I love that. Like I love that they're actually setting those up.
Well, it's
in
also
a way that feels good.
It's also when they use them, because whenever they use them, Chucky's not really in focus. He's moving around in the background. You get that hyper real motion of like the fluidity of like an actual person instead of like, because no matter how smooth the animatronics are, you can still tell it's like the motion of an animatronic.
Right.
But like when you have like the scene, in one of the episodes where Junior's looking around and then the background you see like the Chucky doll like run up the stairs, and it's clearly a kid in a Chucky costume. Right. It's so effectively creepy because like the smoothness of the motion is just so unnatural.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that.
So there's this shot with Junior. It's at I noted it down. It's at 17 minutes and 17 seconds. It's Junior and his. It's so the shot. What the shot is it goes into Junior's bedroom and you see Chucky getting down. He was looking out the window and he's getting down from Junior's desk. And as he's getting down, the camera's moving and it's fluid the whole time. And the camera's pushing into the room and then it turns to the left. Like it kind of, I should say pan, but it's really not what it does. It's like a nodal pan sort of, but it's a free floating camera. It turns to the left and Junior's on the floor at the foot of his bed with his knees up. And he's just kind of like, like thinking his dark thoughts. Right. Yeah. But the technical prowess that went into creating this shot is mind-boggling from someone who like does this for a living. It's so weird because they when you do those shots with a little person, you have to really play with forced perspective, or a kid or whoever's in the suit, right? Yeah. When it's a person, you have to play with forced perspective because realistically, most children you would put there or any little person you put in there, they're still going to be way bigger than Chucky actually should be. And so this shot is seamless, but it's so cool because the actor in the Chucky outfit is kind of moving herky jerky on purpose. Right. So it still kind of looks like how a doll might ambulate. And they use forced perspective. So this is actually entirely a composite shot where the stuff with the Chucky crawling down from the desk would have been shot completely separately and then composited into this room in a way that makes the room feel way shallower than both shots combined. And it's just so seamless and it's so good. And then they even have the carpet in Junior's room has these long stripes pushed into the perspective distance. So like they help sell the weird, surreal, overly long nature of the room. And it's like, I don't know. I know it's difficult to like, if I can't show it, to really explain what I'm talking about, but that shot is just like chef's kiss. I love. Oh
no, I know what you mean. I've seen the Lord of the Rings special features. I know how they shot the hobbits.
They so easily could have just not spent any of that time, and I think probably most people wouldn't really bat an eye because it's fine. You're not there for the visual effects, but they put a lot of work into that, and I was just like, man, this is a nice shot.
You also kind of are there for the visual effects because it's the whole thing. Like it's a killer doll. You want to see the doll move. You want to see that stuff happen, and like the fact that they do so much with the doll. But that scene where you're talking about him getting down from the desk or the window or whatever it was, it just reminds me of Child's Play 1 where Chucky climbs down from the counter in John's house And I thought that was originally just a scene, like that was a person in a suit or something like that in forced perspective. But they actually made the animatronic there do that motion, and it's just a bizarre, very hyper real motion for an animatronic, and it's such a specialized piece of machinery too, to make that very smooth motion of like getting down and like hanging your legs over the counter.
Yeah.
And then, they wouldn't, I was watching the special features on this episode, and they talked about when they were shooting the Death of Logan, how many different Chucky puppets they had to work with, because you had, like, the scowly one, you had the happy one, you'd had the one that would, like, flail its arms. Just all the work that goes into all these puppets is just amazing to me, and how well they utilize them.
Yeah.
Like, I never feel like at the end of the episode, like, man, I wish they would have done more with Chucky, you know what I mean?
Right.
You get just the right amount of it. And, like, doing very complex shit. Like, the whole scene in the 6th episode where he pushes the cart. It's a combination of the different techniques the series is known for, but it works so seamlessly.
Yeah. It's all been... it's obvious that the show has a pretty decent budget. Mm-hmm. But also, they just really know how to do a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 7 movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're really able to. It's like you give them more money, it's going to look better. They're not just going to blow $8 million on a bad CG effect that they slap on top of some wonky practicals. Like they really managed to get it good every time. Yeah, it's really been impressive.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned like the visual effects, because that's part of the reason I brought you on here, was because you have experience in that industry, and I just want to make sure that I'm right in saying like they're doing a great job with this.
Well, yeah, for sure. Well, a lot of times where you see stuff like this suffer is bad comps, which I do comp work, but but where you have stuff, you have your CG elements, or you have your separate elements that you're then bringing into the shot, and then especially with TV stuff, you get pressed for time, and you don't get that time to really sit there and spend the extra time making sure the colors match and stuff. Mm-hmm. Your black levels are appropriate and all that stuff. And it all sounds like, I mean, you would think a computer could just like do that, but you're really going by hand and like making it look nice and doing version after version. And it's really been consistent. Like I'm sure there's been some comps that are a little wonky, especially people driving. You always see it, outside the car windows and stuff. You're like, they're not moving the right direction. That stuff always happens. I'm sure there are some shots if we sat long enough and looked for mistakes, but I mean, it has been really consistently good.
Yeah, I would love to just see like production notes about like, what the schedule is for all this stuff. Like take one shot and just give us all the detail and like how that shot is put together, how long it took, how much planning went into it, how much time it took to fucking render the screen for any CGI. I would love to see stuff like that. And I appreciate that they're kind of giving us that kind of like behind the scenes look, but it just makes me want more.
It really would be cool to see more featurettes on that stuff. I don't feel like it's kind of less common to do featurettes on specifically visual effects stuff. Like practical effects, they'll do it all day long. They'll talk about the puppets, they'll talk about all the animatronics and everything. But with visual effects, studios are weird and they don't want to reveal their. See, they don't want to tell you they made some poor artist spend, work a 90-hour work week trying to make this one model flex in the right place. So
have you had a 90-hour work week?
Oh yeah, I definitely have.
I imagine.
I don't hit it too much anymore. Ever since most of VFX moved to Canada, they're a little more strict about how much you can overwork your employees.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've definitely had. I think I had a 93-hour work week more than once when I was in LA.
Oh man. So was there anything else that you wanted to bring up before we start kind of wrapping up here?
Let's see. I've got little notes. Just little stuff. I appreciate that Kyle still smokes. It's funny.
Yeah.
Like they made a whole just little cigarette gag just to remind you that she's a smoker.
Oh, and then Andy just like
says those things will kill you.
Yeah. Just it's very funny. It's like they're going off to kill a killer serial killer doll, but it's like those cigarettes are going to kill you.
Right.
Which Chucky hasn't killed anybody with a cigarette yet. So it'd be great if like there's a scene where like there's oil somewhere and then he just like lights up, takes a drag, and then like throws a cigarette. Just like the most cliche thing possible, but like I'd love to see that doll do that, because then they could build a doll that does the whole smoking action.
Going back to the kind of unsure relationship between Chucky and Tiffany, even though it seems like she's a part of his plan, it seems like that to me anyway. They made a point to show us a scene where they moved into the house and were like, they were fighting over the fact that Charles killed somebody without her.
Yeah, you always get that tension with them.
Yeah, like it was like a specific scene. Like that was the whole scene. Is pretty much all that happens. But they wanted us to see that. So
yeah, and then of course Fiona Dourif week to week being just absolutely fantastic. She is like so good in this show.
Yeah,
like because you know I've okay, I'll totally admit, like I have a thing for Fiona Dourif. Like ever since like I saw her in Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, where she's just playing this crazy person. Like I don't know, there's just something about Fiona. She's so goddamn good.
She is good. So,
yeah. You know, and then her getting to play like Chucky pretending to be Nico, which is like wow. Like, and the great thing is you can tell. You watch the performance and you can tell, okay, it's Chucky pretending to be Nika, but it's just like you have to kind of pay attention to it. But it's like that good.
Yeah, she's definitely great in every scene that she's been in this. But it's really been pretty sparing how much they're using her. So
well, and I kind of appreciate that, because we're getting like the older cast, but they're not overdoing it. They're not taking over the show. They're just kind of enhancing it in a fun little way.
I'm not sure what the significance of the scene was, but I liked the little scene with Lexi and Caroline pulling the heads off of all of Caroline's dolls.
Oh, like them bonding, yeah. You would have expected Caroline, based on like previous behavior, to like freak out when the doll head pops off. But does that also mean that there's like maybe a darkness to Caroline as well? Because these are like human figures being dismembered.
I don't know. I think it might have just been. Yeah. I think maybe it was just saying Caroline is over the whole Chucky thing, and she's kind of no longer in danger of being influenced by it.
No, sir, you don't understand. I have a degree in literature. I have to overanalyze everything. Okay. It's not just that the curtains are blue. The curtains reflect the state of the author at the time he wrote the scene. So
right. Sorry.
No. It's cool.
Step on your literary analysis.
No. But what I like is that we can maybe even like look at that as maybe she is showing the darkness, and maybe Lexi's not recognizing that or something like that. Because of the writing, you can do that. They've done a good job of kind of like seeding all these little ambiguities and all these little character developments where it's like, oh, you know, it could mean something else. And then if they play off on that, all the better. If they don't, it's like, well, okay, then it was just a little bit of color, but it enriched everything.
Right.
So
let's see what else. And then we didn't actually say what the thing was with the after Junior kills Logan. It appears that was like the magic juice needed to wake up.
Right, and that's kind of
20,000 Chucky dolls.
Right, and that's kind of evoking the whole blood buddy thing that I had mentioned earlier. Where it was like the rage of the child. So maybe Chucky has discovered some sort of new voodoo ritual that requires the corruption of the innocent. That might be a thing. But then again, it gets into kind of all sorts of like Orientalism thoughts on voodoo and that sort of thing. Like eventually I'm going to have to do an episode on exploring like how Chucky treats voodoo versus what actual voodoo is. Because they're very, very different things. I took a class on like witchcraft and that sort of thing. We talked about voodoo and everything like that, and it was absolutely fascinating. We read some really cool stuff, and like it always made me interested in it. But there's definitely like a kind of Orientalism in Chucky that I still kind of find problematic.
Well, I always took. I think kind of I assumed what they want me to do is just kind of assume, oh, it's some spiritual gobbledygook, right? Like the words he says in his like famous chant, I think some of them are in French, some of it's in Spanish.
Well, and that matches like kind of like the Creole of Louisiana and Jamaica, the patois and everything like that. But it's just, again, there's voodoo is like not voodoo, voodoo. There's a difference between them. One is VOODOO and then one is VODOU. And it's a real thing. It's a real thing. And while I appreciate like it as a device, I do have some like issues with it, which I do want to talk about. Like I'm not an expert, don't get me wrong, but like I know enough through having read this stuff, and there's definitely a conversation to be had there, and I want to try to find someone who knows a little bit more, just to, because don't get me wrong, like I love the device in the films, but I kind of hope they get away from it a little bit. And maybe this is part of that whole blood awakening or something like that, because
that would be interesting.
It is a culture, you know what I mean? It is a culture. It is a series of religious beliefs, and you need to be able to you need to treat these things with their appropriate level of respect. You can't just use them. It'd be like me making a movie and then just having someone drink the communion wine and all of a sudden they become a zombie because Jesus was a zombie.
Sorry, I'm going to laugh over you talking. It's just the whole time you're saying how they should be like respectful of it and everything. I'm in my head. I just keep seeing Jennifer Tilly holding a bright yellow Voodoo for Dummies book.
Yes. And again, it's part of the whole camp of the thing, but I do feel like there's an important conversation to be had.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's like you could consider it cultural appropriation, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be like the ultra woke lib or anything here, but like I think it's important because it's become such a fundamental element to the series, and it may be changing the way people think about this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of influence to have, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it would be interesting for if someone were like a more of a expert on that specific area of the occult to kind of like weigh in on on how those themes actually would be offensive or not offensive, or would apply or wouldn't apply to.
Because I don't know if it's even like truly offensive. I don't know, but I feel like it's a conversation that has to be had. Yeah. So, I'm sorry. That's the end of my little rant here. But no, I just I wanted to like talk about that a little bit. But now I think with that being said, do you have one last thing you want to talk about, or are we ready to kind of move into plugs?
I think I'm good. I think we covered everything I had notes on anyway.
Yeah, and we're not gonna like do an exhaustive thing because we could be at this for like hours, but or at least I could.
There was gonna say one last little thing that I liked, and it was just a quick kind of one-off thing. Was as Jake was going to the bus station, he was listening to Devin's podcast again, and I really like when they bring that in because it kind of reinforces their relationship.
Well, and then that was the podcast just before his mom died too, which is even more painful.
It is. But I also think like, because it's kind of, it sort of ends it, like what he's listening to, it ends on a positive note. Cause it's kind of saying like, remember that your town still sees you, your loved ones, even maybe even after they pass, still see you. Yeah. And I think it was just nice to have that little bit that still shows you these kids are capable of being optimistic. They're not Andy Barclay yet. Right? They've still got a little bit of hope for the future.
That's the thing. I think we're going to see that like Jake doesn't become an Andy. Like as much as I love Andy does not have a good existence.
Right.
At least it looks like at least Jake can like salvage a little piece of his soul after all of this. So,
so that's been a thing that I like.
I think that's a good insight though. It's a very nice kind of writerly technique that Don and his writing team have like come up with, because it does a lot to kind of foreshadow hopefully the more optimistic direction that the lives of these children can go through.
Right.
So now with that being said, let's go ahead and move into plugs. Do you have anything that you would like to plug?
Oh, nothing in particular. If you want to if you want to see me try to play mostly horror games and be really bad at them and just kind of stream of consciousness, I do have a Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/Fryhide, FRYHYDE.
Okay, yeah. Question: like, why do you go by Fryhide?
It's really stupid. When I was very
not
young,
any stupider than why I go by HPKOMIC.
Oh, HPK. I know why you go by HPK, and that one makes more sense. But when I was like 12 or whatever, I had to come up with some kind of web handle, and I was trying to be LOL random, and so I was like, oh, fire hydrant, but spell it all with Y's, and that was dumb. But I went by that. People just knew me as that for a long time, kept going by that, and eventually I just adapted it into Fryhide, and I like that a lot better because one of my favorite characters that has ever existed is Fry from Futurama, who I identify with on quite a personal level.
Yes, no, I love Fry. Well, you know, that's interesting, like, for those of us who have, like, these long-standing, like, online identities where we, you know, because the internet today is not so much about having those kind of usernames. You know, people are just going to put their names out there. But for, like, people like you and I, we're known more by our online pseudonyms for a lot of people we know.
Right.
You know, it's for like, sure. When I say hi to you, I don't say, hey Corey. I say, like, hey Fry, you know, that sort of thing. That's a subject for like a completely different conversation, but it's just interesting how for like a certain generation, like we identify with these kind of very specific, odd, jokey names.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And it's like the weirder or the more unusual it is, it's the more you stick with it because it's like it's always available on every new service that you have to sign up for.
Exactly. Yeah, so like you can find me as HPKOMIC on like everything. So like that includes Twitter. I went ahead and canceled my Instagram because I am now completely detached from the Facebook machine. Mm-hmm. I'm fucking done with it. But no, like you can find me everywhere as HPKOMIC. That's like my plug. You know, make sure you listen to Supernatural Selection if you can. We're doing all sorts of fun paranormal stuff. We're doing Patreon episodes. I'm starting my research on my Nostradamus episodes, which I'm very excited about.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then we're talking about doing a fun like little 3-parter. So you know, it's I love doing this podcast, but I really, really love showing up on Supernatural Selection. I love being on that podcast. If you haven't heard it, go to supernatpod.rocks. It'll take you to the website. Listen to the 3-part series that I wrote on The Legend of Boggy Creek because you learn more about a swampy skunk ape than you'll ever need to know.
Skunk apes.
Skunk apes. I think that's it for this episode. I'm like, hey, yeah, we could do this under an hour, and now we're like an hour and 12 minutes.
Not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. That being said, Corey, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and then maybe I'll have you on for the Cult of Chucky episode, so that way we can get some real tension going on here.
Oh yeah, I'll rewatch it and
yeah, it's one of my favorites, so it'll be interesting to like hear what your thoughts on it are. So okay, so I think that's it. Again, thank you for showing up. Thanks to the audience for listening. And with that, we're gonna close out. So keep it creepy.
Keep it creepy.
You have been listening to Kids' Stuff, a Chucky podcast, a HauntedMTL original podcast. Our theme is Pop Goes the Weasel by Kevin MacLeod. You can find more of Kevin MacLeod's music at incompetech.filmmusic.io. If you want to find out more about me, the podcaster, you can just go to hpkomics.com, hpcomics.com, or you can find me on the socials at hpkomic. For more great horror content, do not forget to visit HauntedMTL.com.